All right, let's take a look at problem 1, which is factoring a perfect square trinomial. Now, before we begin here, I want you to think about, will you have an a plus b quantity squared or an a minus b quantity squared? Okay, well, if you take a look at your middle term, that will give you your answer. If you have a plus middle term, then you're going to have an a plus b quantity squared. If you have a minus middle term, then you're going to have an a minus b quantity squared. Okay, so if your middle term is an addition, you'll have an a plus b quantity squared. If your middle term is a subtraction, then you will have an a minus b quantity squared. Okay, so keeping that in mind, let's take a look at our first and last terms now. So for the first problem, we have x squared and we have a positive 9. Well, it's always going to be a positive at the end, because when you take a positive times a positive, it's going to be a positive. And if you have a negative times a negative, you're going to have a positive. So here, we need to check to see if our first term is a perfect square and if our last term is a perfect square. Well, let's see. X squared, that is a perfect square. And we get that, of course, by doing x times x. And then 9 is also a perfect square because we can get 9 by doing 3 times 3. Okay, then we have to take a look to see, we need to check, is our middle term, do we get that middle term from multiplying twice one of the first terms, or one of the factors of the first terms, and one of the factors of the second term. So here, 2 times 3 is 6, times x is 6x. So yes, this is going to give us, this is a perfect square trinomial. Now, we need to know, is it going to be an a plus b or an a minus b quantity square? Well, because it has an addition for the middle term, it's going to be an a plus b quantity squared. So all we do is just write it. So we have x plus 3 quantity squared. Now, where did I get those? Well, of course, you can see it right here. We have one of those and one of those, and those are going to become part of our binomial. And you just square it. So if you look at problem B, let's check to see if we have a perfect square trinomial. So x squared is x times x. So that is x times x. That is a perfect square. How about 49? 49 is a perfect square because we can multiply 7 times 7. And now I want to check to see if I take twice my a times my b, will I get my middle term? So I have 2 times x times 7, and yes, indeed, that gives us 2 times 7 is 14, times x is 14x. So this is a perfect square trinomial, so we can write it using one of our a terms, one of the factors of the a term, and one of the factors of the c term. So our binomial then will be x minus 7 quantity squared. And of course, you can always check using FOIL. All right, that's problem 1.